Hello and welcome to the Minimum Competence episode for Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. I'm your host for today, Andrew Leahy, a tax and technology attorney from New Jersey. On today's episode, we cover the UAW president's investigation for alleged retaliation, Justice Alito's secret recording on returning the U.S. to godliness, the Fifth Circuit scrapping an AI rule, and Column Tuesday on an atrocious Arizona homelessness bill. Let's remember, Tuesday is nearly Wednesday, and Wednesday is the midpoint of the week, so we're almost to the weekend. Let's read today's legal news. On this day in legal history, June 11th, 1963, a pivotal moment in the American civil rights movement unfolded at the University of Alabama. Governor George Wallace famously stood in the doorway of Foster Auditorium to block the enrollment of two African-American students, Vivian Malone and James Hood, symbolizing his commitment to segregation. This act of defiance came to an end when President John F. Kennedy federalized the Alabama National Guard, compelling Wallace to step aside under military pressure. The successful enrollment of Malone and Hood marked a significant step towards educational desegregation in the South. On the same day, President Kennedy delivered a landmark civil rights speech addressing the nation and emphasizing the moral and legal necessity of ending racial discrimination. Kennedy's speech highlighted the importance of civil rights as a fundamental issue of morality, equality, and justice, urging Congress to pass comprehensive civil rights legislation. This address and the events at the University of Alabama signaled a turning point, showcasing the federal government's commitment to enforcing desegregation and protecting civil rights. The confrontation in Tuscaloosa and Kennedy's impassioned plea laid the groundwork for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which aimed to eradicate racial discrimination across various facets of American life. United Auto Workers, that's the UAW president Shawn Fain, is currently under investigation by the union's federal corruption monitor, Neil Barofsky, for allegations of retaliating against another union officer. This investigation poses a significant threat to Fain, who has built a reputation as a reformist leader closely aligned with the Biden administration. The court-appointed monitor's 36-page report details claims of increased resistance from the union, including delays in providing documents mandated by a consent decree established in 2020 to avoid a federal takeover. Fain, who narrowly won the presidency last year by pledging transparency and reform, now faces accusations that challenges his public image. The same day the report was filed, the UAW achieved a landmark contract with Altium Cells LLC, which significantly raised wages for workers. This victory followed Fain's success in unionizing a Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee, though efforts to unionize a Mercedes plant in Alabama failed. The Monitor's report highlights at least two officials who allege retaliation for refusing to approve certain expenditures. One incident involves Fain reassigning duties from Vice President Rich Boyer, purportedly for dereliction of duty, though Boyer claims it was due to his refusal to engage in financial misconduct. Fain has denied these allegations, attributing them to his disruptive efforts to reform the union. He maintains that the UAW leadership is committed to democratic principles in serving its members and welcomes the investigation to clear any doubts. The report also suggests that the UAW's cooperation with investigations has declined since February, complicating the Monitor's efforts to address the corruption. This investigation into Fain is connected to another probe involving Secretary-Treasurer Margaret Mock, who alleges that her power was curtailed in retaliation for not approving expenditures beneficial to Fain's office. The U.S. Department of Justice supports the Monitor's claims, noting that the union's actions are impeding efforts to eliminate corruption within the UAW. A secret recording of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, made public by liberal activist Lauren Windsor, reveals him supporting the idea of returning the country, quote, to a place of godliness. The authenticity of the recording, shared on social media and with Rolling Stone, has not been independently verified by anyone. Alito is heard, though, agreeing with Windsor's statement about the necessity for believers in God to fight for the country's return to, quote, godliness. When questioned about political polarization, the voice identified as Alito suggests that deep ideological differences make compromise difficult and predicts that one side will ultimately prevail. Windsor argues this reveals a bias undermining judicial impartiality. James Duff, executive director of the Supreme Court Historical Society, condemned the secret recording as inconsistent with the event's spirit. Alito is also under scrutiny for flags linked to former President Donald Trump's election fraud claims flying outside his homes in New Jersey. Despite Democratic calls for his recusal from related cases, Alito denied familiarity with the flag's symbolism and stated that his wife was responsible for the flag flying. The Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans has decided against adopting a pioneering rule that would regulate the use of generative artificial intelligence by lawyers in its proceedings. Initially proposed in November, the rule would have required lawyers to verify the accuracy of citations and legal analysis generated by AI tools like OpenAI's ChatGPT. Misrepresentation could have led to sanctions or filings being dismissed. The court's decision was influenced by public comments from the legal community, which largely opposed the rule, arguing that existing regulations already ensure the accuracy of court filings. Some other federal appeals courts have also considered similar regulations due to incidents where AI-generated briefs included fictitious citations. Despite scrapping the proposed rule, the Fifth Circuit emphasized that parties in council are still responsible for ensuring their filings are truthful and accurate. The court made it clear that using AI will not excuse any violations of existing rules. And look at that, it's Column Tuesday, and on a Tuesday. In November, Arizona voters will decide on a proposal that would grant homeowners greater property tax refunds. This proposal allows taxpayers to seek refunds for expenses incurred due to the state's inability to mitigate what it deemed a, quote, public nuisance caused by unhoused populations. I argue that a more compassionate approach would incentivize contributions to initiatives that assist the unhoused, rather than compensating homeowners for their mere presence. This proposal risks fostering negative perceptions of unhoused individuals by framing homelessness as a detriment to homeowners. Traditionally, property taxes have funded public services that benefit communities, including support for vulnerable populations. State governments often use tax revenues to combat housing shortages and provide relief to economically disadvantaged groups. The proposed policy in Arizona, however, shifts this focus, potentially causing long-term harm by categorizing homelessness as a homeowner inconvenience. Arizona faces an affordable housing crisis with a statewide shortage of 270,000 homes and a 72% rise in homelessness in Phoenix over the past 6 years. The proposal could drain state resources and set a precedent for taxpayers to claim refunds whenever state policies are perceived to cost them money. This shift undermines broader efforts to fund social services and could lead to selective taxpayer funding of services. A humane alternative would involve increasing property taxes in areas with high unhoused populations to fund comprehensive social services. This could include affordable housing, shelters, mental health services, and job training programs. Taxpayers could receive incentives for donations to approved nonprofits assisting the unhoused, creating a virtuous cycle where increased funding reduces homelessness and, consequently, lowers property tax bills. As Arizona voters consider this proposal, they will influence how the state addresses homelessness and the role of property taxes in supporting community welfare. That is, they can proceed forward with either compassionate approaches that can mitigate homelessness or to reinforce social divisions by using tax policy to marginalize the unhoused. And with that, I thank you so much for listening to Minimum Competence, your daily news podcast for lawyers. If you're looking for more than Minimum Competence, links to further reading on all the topics touched on today are in the show notes. Reviews go a long way towards helping new listeners to find our show. If you have a moment and can leave a rating or review on your podcast player, we'd sure appreciate it. And if you know someone that might be interested in a story we cover, consider sending them the episode. But remember, nothing here should be construed as legal advice because it is certainly not that. Minimum Competence is available at minimumcomp.com and wherever you get your finely crafted podcasts. If you haven't checked out the website in a while, give it a look. There are complete transcripts and resources for each episode and its corresponding segments, as well as an opportunity to receive new episodes in email, newsletter, form. We'll see you back here tomorrow, and until then, remember, we'll see you back here tomorrow.